First of all, I'm Tom Geis, our Cloud Technology Services Leadership as a part of Netsmart, and I'm here with Mike Brand, our EVP for our Solution Development and Delivery, and we're excited here to talk to you today about real intelligence. With the headlines ablaze with artificial intelligence, and notably so, there's been tremendous gains in that area with ChatGPT and things of the like, and even some of the exciting things that we heard about this morning in the keynote, and that deserves its place in history, I believe, and for sure in our attention space today. But let's not forget about the value of real intelligence and building that through partnerships, or as I've called here, human neural networks. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the value of real intelligence and human neural networks and how you build those partnerships and how we did that at Netsmart with InterSystems to help us build our IRIS in AWS and position us for continuous transformation and innovation. So before we dive too far into what we did and how we did it, I would like to introduce Mike Brand to share more about who Netsmart is and why what we do is so important. Mike?
Thanks, Tom. So thanks everybody for coming, appreciate it. So my name is Mike Brand, I'm an Executive Vice President at Netsmart. I lead our engineering team and our client support team. So those are the two teams that I lead specifically, and a couple of other roles at the company. Tom and I decided to kind of divide and conquer the approach in the presentation. Mine, like I said, is to give kind of a history on Netsmart, but also to give more of the business drivers onto why we did this, as opposed to just the technology aspects of it. So my thought process is really, when you think about the technology side of it, that's great, but what business values are going to be driving for it? How are you going to ultimately be growing the company, growing the organization, scaling? That's really what drove us to do this as well. It wasn't just technology for technology's sake. So with that, Netsmart as a company, we're a little bit older than InterSystems, so sorry Terry, sorry we got you beat by a few years. But we actually focus on what's also interesting is when you think about our industries or the communities we serve. Many years ago, they still are very underserved, but it really wasn't going to be in the highlights of the newspapers like it is now. So we serve behavioral health. We're the largest HCIT vendor in that space. So mental health services, substance use treatment, also overall community care, home care, hospice, post-acute, IDD, so developmentally disabled. Those are the communities that we serve across the country. We're the largest vendor in those spaces. And what makes that unique is you're dealing with a lot of different communities that are outside acute care, and they all have to communicate, and they have to work together, and they have to collaborate. Another interesting thing we're talking about a lot today is about interoperability. That was a key tenet in how our clients work together. They have to have interoperability. So we realized as a company many years ago, to be successful, we had to do interoperability. And you'll see that'll become a very key part of some of the complexities that we deal with within our technology enterprise architecture. You see some of the numbers down on the side. So over 100 million lives impacted by our technology on any given day. We're sitting here in Florida, so Florida Vital Records System. So anybody that's born, that's died, that's married, goes through our technology. In Florida, we have a very large footprint of EVV, electronic visit verification for home care services. That's our technology. So if you name the state you're from, we have a client there, and I can likely tell you about some of the work that we do in any place that you're in the US. We're not international. So for anybody international, we're not international. But if you're here from the US, I can probably tell you a story about some people that we serve in your communities. So as I mentioned, these different communities that we serve, that's really the circle on the left. This is actually an image that we created probably about 12 years ago. And it really was our vision for Netsmart and where we were going to go, which is to say for us to be successful, we needed our communities to work together and communicate and have interoperability. And we were going to be the bridge to acute care. Acute care was doing what they do. They're doing the medical model. They're doing acute care. We were going to be doing all those surrounding communities. And then we were going to build a bridge to connect those two things. And we call it our Care Connect Bridge. And that was really the foundation of our interoperability strategy. To serve all these communities, we have a lot of different software. We have a little different solutions. Will's our InterSystems partner. He's my key contact. He came to our conference coincidentally about a month ago and walked away saying, wow, you guys got a lot of IP. And we do. These are all the different communities that we serve that I showed you, but then the different solutions. So whether it be analytics, whether it be pop health, whether it be a data platform, whether it be our services, whether it be and ultimately our EHR. But we don't have just one EHR, we call them care records. We have multiple, and that's important as well. So my avatar is the name of our care record that uses the InterSystems technology. We have several others, but going back to my interoperability standpoint, in order to have all my solutions communicate, I needed to build an interoperability engine for my own software. And that's really what we call our care fabric. So this is just kind of an interesting visual to give you a feel. So in the month of March, so this is 1 month, this is the number of transactions that we processed within our own internal enterprise architecture. And this is our own interoperability engine. So in the month of March, we did almost 1.7 billion transactions. Those are admissions, those are demographic updates, those are orders, those are medications, those are visits, those are referrals. The list goes on and on and on. And all of those payloads are being processed all month long, nonstop. And for the 1 month, it was, as you can see, 1.7 billion transactions. But what we're here to talk about is my avatar. And that is our EHR, care record, EMR, whatever term you'd like to use, that runs on the InterSystems technology. And it is our largest platform, and to put it in scale, when we're talking about this, we have a little over, and I have some helpers over here to make sure my math is right, we have a little over 300 clients running on my avatar. Every client has 4 cache instances, so they have a log, they have a test, they have a dev, instances, and we also use multiple namespaces. So when all is said and done, we're managing upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 cache namespaces across our data center. So when you deal with that level of complexity with all the other solutions, there's a lot going on that we have to manage and work through. So when we talked about going to the cloud, going to AWS, and that's the one that we're moving to, why would we do that? The pictures on the right are if anybody's familiar with some basic math when you're dealing with a self-hosted or your own data center compared to working with the public cloud, that's the one on the top that you've likely have seen before. And the one on the bottom is just really a visual of our security investment over the last several years. Anybody who's doing this, your security investments are growing astronomically. It's an exponential growth every single year. That's what the bottom chart is representing. That's our ongoing investment in our security infrastructure. And the one on the top is really kind of your classic, what's your cumulative CapEx? So if you're buying your equipment, you're buying your servers, you're doing that CapEx investment, and then over time you're amortizing, it's depreciating, and ultimately if the revenue catches up, that's great, but what if it doesn't? You still out all that money. So typical view, when you look at these types of things, how can you grow? Ultimately, to get over to Tom, from the business standpoint, the way we approach this is you build a plan, and this is just a rinse and repeat model that I'm about to go through. But what we look at the business side, and basically that's what I'm working with Tom, work with the engineering team. I used to be a developer. They don't let me write code anymore. I'm not qualified to do that anymore. They'll tell you all about that later. But my job is really to work with my executive team with our finance team, and why should we make the investment? What's the upside? What's the ROI? And the way we do this really is by approaching it as define the plan, create the baseline KPIs. So if we're going to do this work, when we're done with it, what's the outcome going to be? Create those KPIs that you have to create, that you want to measure against, and then we execute. And we got to move fast. And we walk in there knowing it's not going to be perfect. We will not hit every KPI. If you hit every KPI, you didn't move fast enough. Or you're a sandbagger. It's one or the other. But we're okay at the executive team of not hitting every goal. That's okay, because you're going to learn, you're going to pivot, you're going to redefine your baseline, you're going to redefine your KPIs, and you're going to action again. And you're going to go again and again. The question really becomes at the end of each one of those phases, do you pause and really rethink the strategy? Because if you missed your KPIs that badly, that's okay too. And candidly, with these migrations, we had one project we paused for close to a year to reset our overall strategy. We have other projects that we may pause for a week, and we just keep on going because we know we can iterate and improve and constantly improve. So that's really the strategy on the business side. What I will tell you is our long view on this move over the next 3 to 5 years, and it's about security, it's about automation, it's about overall redundancy, resilience, it's really in the tens of millions that we're talking about. So it was a pretty easy sell to the board to do this. It was a significant investment. It still is a significant investment, don't get me wrong, but the ROI is there. So if you're looking at how you're going to scale your organizations, to me, there's really be no other way to do it. This is what you need to do. If you're currently self-hosted, private, and you're wondering if you should go, it's not a matter of whether you should go or not, you need to. The real strategy is how do you get there? And what we really did with InterSystems, and Tom will get into this, is before we moved forward, we sat down with them and said, okay, here's our vision, here's what we want to do, how do we do this together? And it wasn't just us and InterSystems or us and AWS, it was all of us sitting at the table figuring out how do we get the best of everything together to make sure that we can be successful in this deployment and achieve all of our mutual goals. So with that, I'll hand it off to Tom, and he's going to run you through the real work.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate that. I'll take a moment and reflect back on what Mike just shared, though, because a big part, and actually the most important part of what we do in technology and leading our cloud technology services is to first make sure that we connect in with the need for the technology so we don't just go do it for technology's sake. I love technology. I will go do things for technology's sake on my own time for fun, but when it comes to the business, we need to make sure that we connect it back in. Just as you saw this morning in the keynote when they started with a user story, that was something to really key into and what we need to do. So you need to understand what are the requirements, and if you just took a snippet of what we just heard, a Care Fabric platform that is processing 1.7 billion messages a month. We need to be positioned for continuous innovation. We need to understand that the security complexity is here now and it's only growing, so how do we factor in for that? So those are just a few of the things that you heard. But the other thing that I want to comment on is what Mike shared, not only as today in this meeting, but as our EVP and of engineering and as my primary care stakeholder in my technology platform that we provide. And that is setting that stage for collaboration and for innovation and saying, listen, we know we're not going to get everything right, but we want to continue that pursuit. And then setting the table that we need to do it with partnerships together. So we'll talk more about this as we get into the partnership and building that, but that's a key part of how we maximize our real intelligence in that human neural network. As leaders, if you're a leader in your space, keep that in mind and make sure you do a self-assessment and ask yourself, am I setting that expectation for my team? That it's not about getting everything right immediately. It's about how can we make progress and learn quickly and not do it alone. Let's do it together so we learn together and move forward together. That's a key part of building those human neural networks and getting the value out of that real intelligence. You may notice the nod to the upgrading our chess pieces here in that slide. That's intentional. And it may be a surprise to some of you to know that in 2023, we stand here with the most popularity of chess and the platform underneath that, chess.com, than history. So one of the most iconic and historic games, chess, is now more popular where we sit here today than it ever has been before. That's pretty interesting. Also, I like to look at other industries to learn from them. I think it offers us a chance to get new lenses, new perspectives, and let's look at how the technology that we have today from the cloud computing platform and extreme demand has impacted chess. And we'll look at a few of the problems that chess.com has had and how they've overcome them. Before we do that, I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of a taste of why is chess more popular now than it ever has been before? What is doing this change? What is driving that energy? Let's check that out. I'll give you a moment here to take a little snippet of Michelle Carré from Challenge Accepted.
On this episode of Challenge Accepted, I am going to see how good I can get at chess in just 30 days. Starting from ground zero, I'm going to be trained by some of the top chess players in the world. And at the end of this video, I will be competing in PogChamps 3, an actual chess tournament against some of the biggest streamers on the platform. Challenge accepted.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
My name is Levi Rosman. I'm an international master, and I'll be your coach through this challenge. So I've been playing chess since I was 5 years old. I played my first tournament when I was 7. I've been in the top 5 for my age in the United States for basically my whole childhood, and I was number 2 in the country when I was 12. How much chess have you played?
I know how the pieces move. Mm-hmm. I know the knights go in the L and the rooks go
like that.
Here and here. And then the bishop goes here on the diagonal. And then the queen is just like a baller who goes wherever.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you and I just play a game? It's not necessarily a fair fight, so I will wear a blindfold.
For the whole game?
Yeah.
Pawn B3.
Larson's opening. Maybe you aren't such a beginner after all. I'll go pawn to E5.
Okay, I hope I'm doing this right. Okay, my turn. How about knight goes from B1 to C3?
I'll play bishop to C5.
Bishop. C5. You go so fast. You're blindfolded. You know what? Okay, how about this? Pawn A4.
I'll go pawn to D5.
Okay. Knight goes from G1 to F3.
You're attacking my pawn. I'll push that pawn from E5 to E4.
Knight E5.
Queen to F6.
Pawn F4.
Queen takes pawn.
Bishop B2.
Okay, so I can take your knight with my queen, but I think a better move is Queen F2, checkmate.
So some impressive chess there. Michel Carré did go on and do quite well in the PogChamps 3 tournament, competing and beating some players with rankings over 1,000 ELO. If anybody's familiar with chess, that's pretty good, especially in her first 30 days to go from that level. And she did that because she started on the onset by seeking out the right partners, right? So, you know, that's what we did when we had our first meeting with InterSystems. We had them all put on blindfolds and we started the meeting. No, we didn't do that, but you can see the importance of starting out with somebody who knows it so well that they could do it blindfolded. And that's why, to Mike's point, we started with partnerships from the very beginning. To keep going with a little bit of insight into chess.com, when they first had, they're no stranger to exponential growth. When they had that first occur after the Queen's Gambit, they saw 10 years worth of growth in just 6 months. Pretty dramatic. So they made a shift. They made a shift in their platform, in this case to public cloud into Google. And they noted at that time, July 2021, with the cloud's near infinite ability to scale, hang on to this, we don't have to forecast what our site traffic is going to be at any point. We no longer worry about the site being resilient enough to withstand unexpected surges. Okay, July 2021. January 2023, well, they had renewed surgence because of things like Michel Carré's video, Gotham Chess, who was also a part of that video. If you go watch some of his things, he's very exciting. He posts things about ChatGPT playing against other bots and things, and he makes it quite dynamic and exciting. And they also incorporated AI and have done a lot of good things. So this is not a dig against chess.com. They've done a good job adjusting, but rather there's things that we can learn from here. So let's check out January 2023. Chess.com describes the problem as a technical bottleneck that involves unscalable parts of the chess playing platform. So 2021, we don't have to worry about scale and resiliency. We shifted platforms. January 2023, maybe we do have to worry about scalability. Now, did they do something wrong? I mean, they're on their own journey. I think they're doing amazing. I actually use chess.com. I started to get back into chess myself over last Christmas and have enjoyed it. Amazing tools and things out there to do, and they actually have done a good job of making it fun. But there's things that we can learn. And the basic thing that I want you to walk out of here today with is it's not about just shifting platforms. Yes, that's important. The technology itself is extremely important. But there's two other key components that I would like for you to remember today. And that is the pursuit matters and the partners matter. So getting the right platform is key, but you need to do that in conjunction with a clear pursuit. And in this context, the pursuit I'm talking about especially appeals to, like if you go look it up in the dictionary, it's like the second or third one, but it talks about the eye following a moving object. A lot of times we'll use the word vision or what's your strategy. There's nothing wrong with those terms. But if you think of it as a pursuit, it denotes that it continues to move, and that's okay. It's about you chasing that and continuing to innovate and iterate, as Mike shared. So what is your pursuit, and are you making that clear to the whole team and to your partners so that they can jump in and help you? And then the partners, as we saw Michel Carré doing a great example for us, partnering up with Gotham Chess. So we took that same approach and about 2.5 years ago, from a cloud technology services perspective, we asked ourselves, what do we need to do? And how do we see ourselves best helping Netsmart in our vision? Thinking of the context of that broader slide that Mike shared, of Netsmart's strategy of whole person care, what role does the platform play in that? It's still important. The pursuit, and what I'll get to in a minute, is important, the partners are important, but the platform is important too. So how do we get clarity of pursuit? If we think of the cloud platform as really, its function should be to take the summation of all the code, of all the IP that we have across that entire continuum of care, how quickly can we get that into the hands of the clinicians, the physicians, the people that are providing care to the patients in their moment of need that are our friends, our family, and sometimes ourselves. If we can do that, wow, we really can have a positive impact on healthcare. So how do we do that? You start with the right question. If you want a clear pursuit and you want to get to the right platform, you got to ask yourself that question. That's our question. What we came up with is this driving clarification for our pursuit. And that is that we connect, create, and care. And there's a framework behind that. It's based on ITIL V3 and V4 mixed together with a little bit of agile framework and some UX, earnest, go listen to your users. That's the connect part, like I shared about earlier. The creating, that's your service design, going through and making sure you have the right architecture parameters for those business requirements and caring for it. And the care here denotes a lot of things, but we got to think about our day 2 operations, and we have to think about how that functions for those that are providing care as well in the clinical space. Those things are updated, but they're not dramatically new. You know, we had these things in previous paradigms for cloud technologies. The next part is key. It has to be adaptive and sustainable. Sustainable is an important word today in the context of, you know, Earth's resources, but I'm really calling to one of Earth's most important resources here, and that's us as people. It has to be sustainable, meaning from the day 2 operations perspective, and then also from a cost perspective. And it has to be adaptive. It has to be able to maintain track with your pursuit and with your vectors. That ecosystem has to accelerate the innovation and make it accessible. And here accessible, I'm calling to the code being in the hands and coming to life in the workflows where care happens. And along the way, it's got to perform. If we do all this stuff and we get it into the hands of our clients and it doesn't perform, then we failed. It's got to be secure all the way through that chain, through engineering, through design, through CI/CD, all the way through deployment, and it's got to be resilient. And I love this resiliency term because I'll get in with my teams and we'll start talking about, well, do you mean HA or do you mean DR? I'm like, great, let's talk, right? But you do realize that users don't care. They could really care less if the reason that their service stayed up was because we designed it for HA or fault tolerant, or it's across 3 AZs and there was a failure in one and we're able to automatically reroute through DNS or some other load balancing technique. Let's figure that out as technologists. Let's have all that discussion. But it's all in that area of resiliency. You need that resiliency, you need that scale. So if we do that, we'll be able to take all of the requirements that Mike talked about and make that happen not only today, but continue to be positioned for innovation. So that's a little bit of clarity on our platform and on our pursuit. Let's double back to partnership and this concept of the real intelligence human neural network. Thought it'd be interesting to compare, you know, our capacity. How do we stack up against the competition? For now, we're still ahead. We're still in the area of narrow AI, and we're not yet into general AI and superintelligence that a lot of the media has a lot of attention right now. That I think it's important to be aware of that if you haven't read up on it. But right now, we're still pulling ahead and staying ahead of the game from artificial intelligence perspective. If you take ChatGPT, for example, GPT-3 has about 175 billion parameters. Now, parameters, I'm going to compare those to our synapses in our minds. It's not a one-to-one direct comparison, but Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather behind ChatGPT and that model, his goal was to understand how the human mind works. That was his true passion. So in creating it, it does model the human mind, and the more you dig into it, as I'm sure several of you already have, there's a lot of correlations there. So it is a little bit fair to do that comparison. 100 trillion synapses in most of our minds, and you know, our ability to process information far exceeds the capacity of artificial neural networks today, and our minds are highly specialized biological systems capable of a wide range of cognitive tasks, and that's really where we have the advantage over narrow AI today. Now, there's some pros and cons on both sides, right? On the AI side, you need to deal with hallucinations and bias. Some of you are probably like, well, I deal with that all the time on the human side too. Okay, we won't get into that, but we can help with that. That's why our care records are here. But on the flip side, you know, they don't require food and coffee breaks and of the like. So when it comes to narrow AI in the field of ChatGPT, I think it's probably got us beaten some of its diverse language abilities. And for sure in the chess areas, Stockfish, the algorithm for that, it's probably going to beat any of us, even if we blindfold the computer. But you know, on the human side, we could carve a tree into a chess set. I don't think AI can do that yet on its own anyways. So what does this mean? This is meant to be a call to remind us that the partnership matters. But there's an important thing here that I want to make a call to action for you on. We actually will fail in being better if we don't put in the prep work. Because the artificial neural networks, they can learn two different things and update each other simultaneously. The nature of cloud computing gives it that leverage, and it would beat us in that category. We have to do hard work to come together and collaborate. We need to make sure that our leaders set the stage for us. They create that safe environment. And then we need to jump in and we need to contribute. We need to share what we need. We need to do preparation, and we need to talk, and we need to do one other thing that's really hard for me. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but we need to listen. It takes a lot of work to listen, right? When I made the transition from being more of an individual contributor on the technology side and taking care of systems and into leadership, and had to learn to listen even more and more and more every day, and I would come home and my wife would ask me what I did all day, and I'm like, I need time for my mind to process and catch up on all these things. And I think about it, I'm like, the hardest part of my day was just making sure that I listened to everybody and made sure that they felt heard. And you know, I'm working to make sure that we can still beat the AI and the empathy side. For those of you that saw the keynote this morning, you know, on the physician side, we're losing that battle. The AI was more empathetic. So as a leadership, I want to make sure that I'm able to still beat that on the empathy side. That's an important part of the partnership. We need to make sure that we listen to each other. So on June 30th, and this is actually a picture from the InterSystems building, and on that day, I'll talk about a lot of things that we did. I had about 30 seconds to take this picture. I think that was probably the only 30 seconds that I did look out that window. The rest of the time, we were down either reviewing technical things or looking eyeball to eyeball, discussing, actively taking notes. It was an engaging time that really represented the partnership that we're here to talk about today. But that 30 seconds was nice looking out that window too. When we have these types of partnerships, it's important to set the stage as we talked about, and that's what we did. We had several meetings leading up to that in-person initial kickoff, and those meetings do continue. The teams work together weekly, if not daily. But we did our homework, and we came with a list of areas of interest that we wanted to know. We wanted to share, hey, here's the things that we know about our care record. Here's the things that we know about IRIS. Here's the things that we want to know more about. One of those areas was like, hey, I really want to understand from an InterSystems perspective, what was the approach to containerizing IRIS? Because if I were to just take like a group of 20 technologists and throw them in a room and tell them, hey, great news, I just containerized a database, you're going to get some interesting looks from that group, right? So I really wanted to understand, I know my team wanted to understand it too, what was the nature behind it? Was it really just containerizing it, or did they take a different approach and rethink how they delivered the technology? And I was pleased to hear all the details behind it, and Luca, I believe, was the one that provided a lot of that clarity as well as the rest of the team too. Not to take anything away from Will and Jamie and the rest of them that were there. I appreciate each of you. But it was really interesting to hear that it wasn't just about the containerization, because that was definitely one of my concerns when I hear things like that. It was about taking advantage and deploying the precepts underneath containerization, the abstraction. That ability to deploy across many environments while minimizing variance, and all those things that you get, because the value of containerization is not the technology itself, it's that abstraction and the value that it provides in your ability to do the CI/CD pipeline that's going to lead to our vision. So we covered topics like that. We covered multi-AZ, backup, replication, and each of those areas of interest, we started with a bullet and ended up with about 3 or 4 slides on each and every one of those just for that initial session and several follow-ups. So what does all that mean? It means that do your homework to know what it is that you want to know, and then come ready to learn, ask questions, engage InterSystems. From our experience, they're going to engage at the level that you engage and probably even a little bit more. But you need to set up success for yourself and for your teams, and go make it happen and keep going until you figure it out. And if you got hard questions, keep digging. Keep digging to make sure you're asking the right questions. And I think you'll be surprised what you come up with. So we have a journey roadmap that we came with this already somewhat created, knowing that we needed to optimize our own care record technology. We know we needed to focus in on the IRIS specific component, and we wanted to do it in such a way where we could leverage all the power, in this case of AWS, so that we could maximize the areas that we needed to develop, and then leverage the partnership's abilities in all the other areas. And where we landed is really on the far right. What we call the Model S was an amalgamation of some of the 3 options that we started with. And we were really pleased to hear all of the approaches and the mindset behind IRIS. And of course, intrigued by the performance, and so far what we're seeing with the deployments that we have in AWS today with My Avatar and IRIS. We're seeing promising indications of improved performance, which is great. But we really also gravitated towards the containerization and the other cloud-native-like abilities that it brought to bear for us. So we needed to make some decisions on, do we use synchronous mirroring, asynchronous mirroring? How do we want to run Iris itself? Do we want to containerize it? Because you don't have to. And we looked at a lot of different pros and cons, and I'll stay after here with some of the architects that we have. If you guys have questions, we'll be glad to dive really deep with you on that. And ultimately, we want to get to everything containerized or the equivalent functionality. But where we started for my avatar, and you need to understand too that we had to solve not only for the solution itself, but that entire care fabric and all of the third-party services and HL7 interfaces and the other products that we support. So we had a lot of things to solve for. We are running nearly everything in Kubernetes, but the data layer itself we're running in Rail in AWS and non-containerized for now. We also are looking at leveraging AWS Linux, so we're working with AWS or with InterSystems on that, interested in moving that forward. And that's a great starting place for us. And then to our earlier points, we're going to continue to innovate on that and go forward with that pursuit. Here's a look at the architecture. I'm going to walk through every single one of these. No, I'm not going to walk through it. This is just for reference. If you guys, again, have specific questions on the architecture, I will stay behind here after the meeting, and we'll have some of our architects available if you have any specific questions, or I can follow up with you. So I'm going to bring us in for a landing here and share some helpful practices, talking back to the pursuit and the iterative approach. And you heard Mike talk about some of those core KPIs and some of our opportunities to learn. Well, there's some things that we've come up with along the way that we think really help us and help our teams. And our desire is to distribute and empower our teams as much as possible from a leadership team, and then make sure that we're there to support anytime that they need help. So models that we've come up with that really help us in this category is this concept of same or better across those core KPIs. And these are the primary KPIs. There's obviously others behind there. Security, cost, resilience, operations, performance, and delivery. But we found if we can take and solve for every one of these KPIs while going through a transformation of a technology, my avatar and Iris and AWS being the one at hand here, but we've leveraged this across our portfolio of technology solutions. If we can solve for every single one of those and make them same or better while positioning it for continuous innovation and improved throughput of our IP, then we're winning. And yes, if all of them could be better, that'd be great. But to Mike's point, that's not going to happen. It's going to take too long. We got to move fast. There's only a certain amount of time. And so having this ability for the team to drive forward through our framework, and if you go left to right here, this is how most things flow through, service design, POC, the MVP, production ready, and out through our client base. And then we increase the complexity of clients and tech stacks over time as we solve for more and more and more. But nothing ever quite works that way, as you guys know, right? And I do appreciate the ITIL v4 service value chain. I think it does a better job than ITIL v3 of evaluating the real life of how services actually go through your teams. And we've adopted that, and that's how we live, is like we want to go that way. We want to go fast, learn, adjust, go forward, adjust, go forward. And as long as you have that type of model in line, it allows you to move quickly and learn. But every time that you make a change, we found that it's extremely important to have the same or better methodology for the team. So that if you get, let's say, all the way into migration-ready migrations, and you learn, hey, the delivery is not working the way that it needs to work. We need to tune a couple things in our architecture to make delivery work better. That's great, do that, but make sure that it doesn't now make the security less than what it was in your previous paradigm, or that it drives your cost or your resiliency or creates a problem there. And this provides that balance for your team, and it gives them the direction they need. If they need to change something and improve it, great, go do that change. You don't even need to come back and check with us as long as it does the same or better across the established baseline of KPIs. If you wanted a little bit of a chess parallel, there's a neat little rule called the square rule. So if you're in the chessboard and you're playing a game against Gotham Chess and he's blindfolded and you don't have much time, right? And you're trying to get your monolithic pawn that's moving one space at a time down into a cloud-native queen with scale and resiliency, but you've got the rules and regulations and status quo, a healthcare king trying to get to you and stop you from becoming everything you dream to be. How do you know if you can make it across that board in time? Well, you can do, okay, if I move here, the king can go here and do all these calculations. And you can do that, but it'll take a little bit of time. And we don't have a lot of time. We've got to move fast. So The square rule in chess, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, if you draw a square and make the chess the corner of that square, if the king can move into that square on its next move, you're not going to make it. You better come up with a different plan. But that's just an easy way to take kind of a complex construct and make a decision in short time. And that's what the same or better framework does for us and for our teams. As I bring us in for a landing here, there's one role that I wanted to share with you to help us live that out. This is a look at our matrix team. The role that I want to call out here is one of a technical design advocate. And this role is not like a new fully funded position. It's more of a hat or a t-shirt, if you prefer, that somebody wears. It's already a part of the project team or the transformation team. And we found that it works best that we have like this named role that keeps an eye on those KPIs. So that any time the project team decides we need to make a change here because our cost in this new model is too high, so we're going to make a change. Okay, great. But now let's go check the resiliency. And if you've now brought the resiliency below a level that we're not okay with, then no, sorry, that's not going to work. You're going to have to refactor it. And the role of that technical design advocate is to just keep an eye on that and make sure that leadership is engaged and that we think about it together and we go through that inflection point with that awareness. All right, so to bring us in for a landing, using a bit of a chess fun here, pull it back up. We're trying to change healthcare status quo. We have to do that through all the business complexity that we have. You've got internal and external factors. You want to simplify that down. You've got you and your technology partners locking arms and trying to go change healthcare. Almost like four-player chess. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to take them now, or I'll stay after later as well. Let's see if blue and green here, the roles played by a few of the YouTube chess players, can defeat Gotham Chess and his partner playing the role of healthcare status quo and business complexity. So on the next slide, I will provide my email address as well, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And again, I'll stay after if you guys have any questions. But in the rooms, anybody have anything they want to know more about?
So your transition over to...
They won, by the way. I played that at like 4,000 speed, but if you want to go see the real match, you can go find that on Gotham Chess. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, because nobody can hear Jamie speak, but okay. Anyways, the transition, and of course I've sat in these meetings and stuff, but I'm still going to ask this question anyways for you, is how long do you envision this will all take? Okay, you started this transition. I know you're moving forward. How long do you feel it will take before you're completely moved everybody into the public cloud, everybody onto IRIS?
Yep, great question. So for us, you could see from what Mike shared, Netsmart is a long-standing company, and My Avatar is our primary care record, our flagship product, although it's a part of an overall product suite that together would surpass it. But just standalone care record is very large. And we have hundreds of clients, 300 clients, as Mike shared. And we need to make sure that just like our same or better KPIs, that in our speed of transformation, we have to do it in a way that meets that performance and the security and the resilience, right? So we're moving fast, but we're also moving carefully. And we're going to take our least complex portfolios first and then build it up from there. So we're going to have a lot of progress. I mean, we already have environments in AWS today on IRIS. And we're going to continue to make progress. And in a year's time, we'll have made it significantly through large portions of our client portfolios. The last difficult 20% that may have specific nuances that we have to really go back and make sure that we cover for, those may need to come after that, but we're going to make tremendous progress in the next 12 months. Great question. Any other questions? Please.
I hadn't heard of the term workload architect. Whose workload? Is it people workload or
Sure.
tech?
No, great question. So that's a term that we have given to probably what would be traditionally called the technology architect. So for us in the care record paradigm that you saw the picture that Mike shared, we have several different stacks, several different solutions that make up our entire healthcare ecosystem. And each one of those we kind of think of as a technology workload from a cloud platform perspective. So we may have a My Avatar architect that we say, hey, that's the workload architect for My Avatar. We may have another workload architect for other solutions, like My Evolve is another care record that we have in a similar space. So, yep. Does that answer your question?
Well, do they figure out who and what? Like this person on my team has to work on this person.
Oh, I got you. No, the workload from this context means more so the technical workload. We still rely more on our traditional leadership for that. I've got a director of enterprise architecture that we'll work with him to decide which architect gets assigned to which workload. But we do rotate them around to try to get the cross collaboration. Please.
Did you go with a multi-tenant architecture or a single-tenant architecture for the deployment?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Avatar actually can run multi-tenant, but a lot of our clients require single-tenant instances, so that's why I was giving you all the tenants, and a lot of some of the clients we have, they're statewide organizations. So I think we run in 35 states, so statewide, like state of Texas is one of our clients, state of Colorado, state of Florida. So it's just large, it's just more about the size and scale of what they are as far as running multi-tenancy, but we also have instances of Avatar that actually run multi-tenancy as well. So it's a mix of the two. Yep. It wasn't a strategy to bring everybody into a tenant. It's really where a lot of the automation comes into play, because we have a ton of automation, obviously, in our existing data center, but moving to AWS just gave us a lot more capability on the automation scale, just making sure when I'm deploying something, classic push a button once and deploy it out, 1,000 times, or decide when clients want their updates, I can deploy them out repeatedly the same way in different locations.
And as Mike shared, a lot of the specific requirements mean that we need to go single tenant, but from a cloud technology perspective, we want it to be able to support whatever the need is. It's a part of being the adaptiveness, so if multi-tenant becomes a requirement, we're ready for that as well. So.
We have some clients on bare metal, we have some clients, most clients are on virtualization, so it allows us a lot of flexibility that way too. We also have a couple of clients that are actually on bare metal too.
Was the main driver for that more regulatory or performance, maybe a combination?
For that, which
multi-tenancy. Sorry.
Multi-tenant versus single?
Yeah.
Mostly I would say it was the type of market that we were in and the size of the client from a cost factor became a TCO. So the security we could handle in multi-tenancy within the application, that wasn't an issue. And we handle not just HIPAA, but if anybody's familiar with substance use in 42 CFR Part 2, we also support that as well. So the solution was able to handle that even in a multi-tenancy model. So it was a specific business use case where we're able to use multi-tenancy to drive down the TCO.
Great question.
One question on going to the cloud seems to, create a consumption model or consumption cost model. Mm-hmm. Is there any concern with, at some point, consumption might be higher than expected and doesn't align with your revenue model?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great question. And for each of our different technologies, as we're going through this transformation, that's a part of that cost KPI. So we go through and do the analysis. And in a lot of ways, we refactor the architecture so that the parts of the architecture that can scale, we position it for that ability. And in some cases, we create that capability so that we can take advantage of the cloud. And one of the things that I share about cloud, it relates to cost too, but you can get yourself into trouble really quick in public cloud. You can also get yourself out of trouble really quick in public cloud. So as fast as you can deliver code is almost as fast as you can help drive down the cost too. So absolutely yes, and you need to keep that in mind as you do these transformations and be ready to rethink how you deliver it to make that an advantage instead of a concern, if that helps.
I mean, the example I gave before where I said it took, we actually paused for close to a year on a certain project. We rolled it out and we looked at different size clients. The smaller clients we knew were going to be right on the edge. Medium, we were going to be okay on a profit model. The larger clients, we were going to be in a good spot. And then when we rolled it out, the mix didn't work. We had to say pause. We had to really just re-architect it because we created baseline KPIs, we created the metrics, we identified what we wanted to do. Just didn't work, and we had to press the reset button, and the team did that. And that's where I say at an executive level, you have to have that sponsorship. Tom's talking about that, is saying it's okay to make the mistake as long as you have the plan to pause it, reset it. You can't put me out of business, but it's okay to go fast and then reset, which they did.
Well said. Good question.
So you're switching your technology platform to the cloud, to containers. Has there been any change in how you go about doing your technical work? And were there any things that were big wins for how you do your work?
Sure. I'll answer kind of on two fronts, and then we can talk more later too, because I know we're getting short on time here. But yes and yes. So there's been a lot of shifts in how we do our work, and a lot of that is intentional because we wanted to set people up for success and collaboration and a DevOps community so that we have more communication between engineering and cloud. And a lot of times, if I were to set people in a meeting room, I think they wouldn't be able to tell which is which for a couple roles, which is by design, and that allows for that. And then I think you know, a couple of our wins would actually be situations like what Mike shared about, where there's some areas that we've hit problems and been able to adjust quickly. Yeah. There's some areas where we hit problems and it took us a while to adjust, but we're still able to do that. But there's other examples where, you know, we hit a problem and we're able to adjust really quickly, and you're able to release updates. And if you can go back to, if you're in more of an operations role, kind of like we are in the cloud platform, so this is an encouragement for all of you to do that. If you can go back and share with like your engineering, you know, partners and with your leadership and go, hey, this is an area, and when you go to public cloud, you get more visibility into the cost. We did a lot of work to get this visibility in private cloud, and there's a lot I could share there too, and I think we do an amazing job. But in public cloud, it's there almost by default. You still need to do some work with tagging and all these things, and we can get into that. But you can get that visibility, so you're able to show, okay, here's what's driving the cost. Now let's go sit down and figure out how we could change that. And about as fast as you can communicate that back, at least, you know, in Netsmart, the teams are ready to go do that. And, you know, they'll need to get it in the pipeline and things like that, but then they can deploy an update, drive that cost down, and then you start seeing that you're like, hey, we're actually starting to pull ahead from where we were before in those core KPIs, and that's the really exciting part. So, yeah, good question. Okay. Well, we'll bring you in for a landing here because I'm a few minutes over, but thank you all for your time. I will stay after if you have any more questions. Thank you so much.